Ignorante juris non excusat. Ignorance of the law is no defence. But actually, sometimes it can be. So let's delve a little deeper into that. The concept that just not knowing the law, doesn't get you out of it and isn't an excuse is a very old one. That bit of Latin I used is actually from sort of, Norman times. In ancient Rome, they actually phrased it as not knowing the law can be really bad for you, which I quite like. It's really threatening. But it's the idea that you can't get out of something just because you say, oh, sorry, I didn't know it was illegal, because otherwise everybody would say that. But is that always fair? Because, there's a lot of laws out there. So, how do you know what is and isn't illegal? And this can be a problem, especially in common law countries. And let me give you an example. Back in the 60s, a gentleman produced a ladies' directory, which was basically a booklet advertising the services of certain ladies, explaining what they were willing to do and how much it cost, with a very tasteful nude photograph of each of them. And he was prosecuted. And he was prosecuted for conspiracy to corrupt public morals. The conspiracy being he had agreed with the women because, they had to pay to be in the directory. And he said, well, hang on a second, that's not against the law. Where does it say that? And they said, oh, it's a common law offence. We have this idea that, judges do not make the law, they merely interpret it. And we have common law offences. Murder is a common law offence. There's no statute saying, murder is illegal. It's just always been illegal, and it's been developed through case law. But that went all the way to the House of Lords, and they said, no, that's fine. It's always been an offence. Just because you didn't know about it, that's no excuse. Off you go to prison, matey. However, that has changed now. Because of the European Convention on Human Rights, all offences have to be what we say down by law. That's not just a Steven Seagal film. It actually has quite a few meanings, down by law, because it's also like prison slang, meaning you've been sent to prison. But down by law means you have to at least have the theoretical possibility of checking out what all the laws are. So, for instance, if it's a statute, you can just look it up. If it's something established by common law, then you should be able to, at least look through all the law reports and go, yeah, that's an offence. So that's something. Also, the ECHR also prohibits you cannot be penalised more heavily for something than the penalty at the relevant time was. It's this idea that you cannot legislate retrospectively. However, it can amount to mitigation. There was an interesting case in the old pre-radio days where somebody was at sea, a clipper captain, and he got in a row with somebody else, so he shot him, not fatally. And at the time, that was that was fine because it was like there's no jurisdiction. But the law had actually changed while he was out at sea. So when he got back, the other guy reported him. They said, well, actually, that is illegal now, but because you didn't know. That goes to mitigation. So, okay, fair enough, it is a crime, but you didn't know it was a crime, so we're not going to penalise you for it, but you're on notice this time. I mean, the concept of, ignorance not being a defence, I mean, that also crops up in, civil law. It's like, it's no defence to say, I didn't actually read the terms of the contract. Even if you can demonstrably prove you didn't, the fact you had the opportunity to find out, that's like, sort of tough on you. However, when I say ignorance isn't a defence to law, that's only generally criminal law. So it can be a defence to be ignorant of the civil law. So to give you an example, say you were up for theft or fraud or something like that, but you had actually genuinely believed you were entitled to do that, but you'd got the civil law wrong. So it's like, well, I thought that because of the way, sort of liens or something like that work, I thought that property was actually mine. Now, as a matter of fact, it wasn't. So, theft, dishonestly appropriating property belonging to another with intention to permanently deprive. Well, that property did belong to another, but you didn't actually know it belonged to another person because you've got the civil law wrong. So that actually is a defence. So there you go. I mean, like I say, generally speaking now, the idea is that you should be able to, look up the law. But this did crop up in a case recently. And I'll speak some more about this because it's all about what you're actually allowed to do as a non-lawyer, what's a regulated activity. And somebody who wasn't a lawyer but operated a law firm, and quite reasonably, the court agreed that she was operating, quite honestly, but she was up for contempt as to, had she actually crossed the line and was she litigating illegally? Because litigating when you're not authorised to is actually a criminal offence. And this went to court. Now, as we'll discuss in a future video, what exactly counts as litigation is pretty confusing and not everybody's sure. So the judge actually, they had a big hearing about this as to where the line was drawn. And the judge came down and said, actually, yes, you were litigating illegally. However, we're not going to hold you in contempt because the fact that we've had to spend an entire, have an entire trial about this, and we've had to look and, even the judge had to sort of admit that it's not exactly clear. They said it's not really fair to penalise somebody when the law is so completely incomprehensible. So now we've sort of set down and drawn the line a little bit. You know that you can't do it in future, but we're not going to say that actually amounted to a contempt. But it just goes to show, you do need to keep an eye on these things. I mean, there's also some defences, because tax law is so complicated, the revenue have to sort of be able to point and say it was really clear and really understandable exactly what is and isn't tax evasion. Sometimes they will actually prosecute you, but you'll get a nominal sentence. So it's like, yes, technically speaking, you are guilty of this offence, but we're going to do what we call an absolute discharge. In other words, there is no penalty for this. And then actually a discharge doesn't amount to a criminal conviction. Same with conditional discharges, actually. So even if they say, well, yeah, yes, you've been found guilty, but keep your nose clean for the next 6 to 12 months. As long as you do that, you don't actually have a criminal record. Anyway, as always, hope you found that vaguely interesting and vaguely useful. And this is actually something that possibly is useful. If you did, please consider liking, sharing, subscribing, and all that sort of stuff. And as I know you all like to know where we are, this is a place called Devon. And I'm actually sat on what was once a railway terminal where they used to load all the tin ore and send it off to Wales to be processed. And they would also land all the coal from Wales back here. And there was a railway line that just ended here. And I don't know if you can see, but down there there's a load of big old bunkers where they used to store it.